Good morning, good day, good evening, wherever you are in the world today. On behalf of Rebuilding Your Life Radio and the Train Your Brain, Claim Your Power calls, welcome. I'm your host, Susan Sherayko, so welcome to the show. Today we're speaking with James Ten Eyck, author of Footprints, which is a collection of poems connected to different phases of his life. James hails from Somerville, New Jersey, which is not too many miles from my hometown. He studied math and quantum field theory, received his doctorate from Syracuse University in quantum physics, and I just love talking about quantum theory and quantum creativity because it really energizes me. But I have to admit, I am a novice and an amateur, so we won't get too deeply into that today. But let's find out more about James Ten Eyck. Please wave your hands to welcome James. Hello, James. Welcome.
Hi, Susan. How are you today?
I am excellent. It is a gorgeous day here. Blue skies. The rains have gone, and it feels as if spring is about to pop.
Well, it's a beautiful blue skies here right now, but it's windy as can be, and it's not. It doesn't feel like spring is about to pop. With the temperature. But supposedly by the midweek it will.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. James, when you graduated with your degree in quantum physics, what were the career possibilities? You were an early mover in that area.
No, not too early, because my degree was in quantum electrodynamics. Much of the really prominent work had already been done in that field. I graduated basically at a time when the government spending was down, and it was not a good time to be coming out in physics at that particular time. So maybe I didn't have all the talent, let's say, to be prominent in that particular field. But I was mostly a faculty member, a teacher. I had some publications, and I also picked up a master's degree in computer science along the way, and ended up teaching more computer science than physics at the end.
Well, that's really something, because it's such a. I mean, I would have thought that quantum physics was still exploding forward. Because the rest of us haven't caught up to it, I guess is what I'm sensing.
It was a time when the main emphasis was on the standard model, unifying the three forces except for gravity. Electromagnetic, weak, and strong interaction, and quantum chromodynamics was a bit different from quantum electrodynamics in the fact that the coupling constant in quantum electrodynamics is, I think it's 1/137, so it's pretty small. So you don't have to, you have all these different Feynman diagrams of the possible interactions. But with a small coupling constant like that, you don't have to go beyond the second term in an equation. Whereas in quantum chromodynamics, the coupling constant is quite strong, quite high, so you can't do the same kind of mathematics that one does in quantum electrodynamics, or let's say the electro-weak interaction.
Right. There you have it. You're already. When I think quantum physics and quantum mechanics and all that, I really am thinking about infinite reach throughout the universe, the butterfly effect, and all these psychological impacts. So that's, again, a different application and different look at what quantum does mean. But a lot was going on when you were in school. You were in a very, in the social fabric. You grew up in a very conservative area. I know that Somerville was a pretty Republican
town.
Yes, it was, but the colleges were all ablaze with new activity and social issues. How did that affect you, coming from such a conservative background?
Well, when I was a kid, I went around town with my "I like Ike" buttons and so forth. So, I was that. But really, it's a lot different from what the politics is today. So, the difference between Eisenhower and Stevenson, wasn't going to keep anybody awake at night, depending on which of those parties won. And by the time I got to college, by at least my sophomore year in college, I was in favor of social progress, racial equality, and the Republican Party under Goldwater, and some of the other very conservative voices of that time were opposing. Were all about states' rights and using states' rights to supersede what I considered to be individual rights, human rights. And so, if I had been able to vote in 1960, I probably would have cast my vote for Nixon. But by the time I graduated from college, I voted Democratic all the way.
Well, you seem to admire one person in particular from that period. In fact, you've written a book about him.
Walter Reuther.
Yes. Who was he?
Well, he was a very complicated person. The reason I admired him particularly was for his stance on civil rights and for his, organizing, his labor organizing abilities. I've worked in a asbestos parts, plant during the summer, when I was going to college, and they had a very weak union. And the thing that really struck me, besides the lack of care about the asbestos dust and so forth, was that the people that were there 25 years or more were making the same basic pay that I was. That kids coming in, just for summer work. It wasn't only kids; it would be some of the school teachers at that time would also have to get summer work. To tide them over. And so we were making the same hourly rate that they were, and that didn't seem very fair. So I was a proponent of, the labor movement, and I was, impressed by Reuther's stance in civil rights. He was prominent in the March on Washington event. Let's say very prominent. He was, besides the rabbis and the ministers and priests and so forth that gave the benedictions and invocations. He was the one white speaker on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial that day, and he had a prominent part in planning that event. He recommended moving the event from the Capitol to the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and then provided the sound system for the event so that the sound from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial would carry the distance that was needed. And a lot of the security people, a lot of the union people were there to help marshal the parade.
This is, I really had never, I guess I haven't been in the right circles, but I didn't know anything about him. And when we first chatted, about a week ago, he was so well connected with key figures in the Democratic Party.
Yeah. He grew up a socialist. With his father was a friend of Deb's, and took Walter and his younger brother Victor off to the jail in West Virginia, near where they lived, to meet Debs before he was going to be transferred to a federal prison. He was in jail for giving an anti-war speech at a rally that contained people of draft age or something. So he was arrested under the sedition laws of Wilson at the time. So he ran for president. He was the example they're talking about now. Well, somebody could run for president while they were in jail. Well, Debs ran for president 2 what would it be, 4 years earlier, and received something like 6% of the vote, whereas the sitting president at the time, Taft, only got 12% of the vote. So 6% of the vote wasn't an insignificant, amount. That was the year you had Teddy Roosevelt running as a bull moose and Wilson running as a Democrat. So there were like 4 different candidates that were splitting the vote. So he got to, he ran again 4 years later from jail and received over 1 million votes.
Amazing. So but Reuther was, you're talking about Debs, but Reuther himself was part of, who did you tell me he knew? He was well connected with Eleanor Roosevelt, with Robert Kennedy, and with Martin Luther King.
Yeah, with those people and other world leaders, of the time. One of the things he did when he went to Detroit to work when he was 19 or 20 years old. And he worked a number of years in Detroit, but got involved in union activity and so forth and got himself fired, at the end of 1932. 1933, he arrived, he and his brother Victor were going to take a journey to Europe to learn about the situation in Europe and so forth. So it wasn't a tourist trip. It was, that they wanted to find out what was happening in Europe at the time. So the boat landed in Germany in February of 1932, just before the Reichstag fire. And he hightails it down to Berlin to go do the tour of the Reichstag and so forth. And he has a number of adventures in Germany and throughout the rest of Europe. He's meeting people from the progressive parties, the socialist and labor parties in Britain and France and throughout the rest of Europe. He and his brother go on a bike tour. And return to Germany and so forth. And he's waiting for his visa to get into the Soviet Union to work at the Gorky Auto Works factory in Russia. And that comes in November 11th, Armistice Day, just a day after Roosevelt formally recognized the Soviet Union. The visas come, and so in late November they're off to Russia. Where he stays until about the summer of 1935, when he hears that union activity is picking up in the United States, etc., and comes back via the Trans-Siberian Railroad, has some interesting friends that he meets there and some interesting experiences, coming through Manchuria into China, giving talks in universities in what's now Beijing and Shanghai, and then off to Japan and worked his way back to the United States on a freighter. Lands him on the West Coast.
Right. That's an amazing adventure for a young man to get into.
And he meets a lot of people that become prominent later in Europe. So that's part of the community of people that he gets to know and has lifelong connections with, and also there's nobody of an age that has experienced that part of the world, the whole world really, Europe, and then on through Asia into China and Japan, at the time when war wasn't about to break out. But the year after Reuther left Germany is when the day of the long knives, and when Hindenburg dies and Hitler, effectively becomes the chancellor, the Führer. He's in Germany a little bit before that time, but when all that was starting to happen, when Hitler first won his election after the Reichstag fire.
That has to have been a fascinating period to be, traveling through those particular countries and what with the sensitivity that he had to social justice and all that, those kind of topics. Is that what your book talks about with him?
It does. It talks about, there are these aspects of his life. The next one would be, the formation of the UAW, or at least the transformation of the UAW into what the AFL called a federal union, into a part of the CIO, and how he becomes, he's there at that would be in 1936, so he would be 29 years old then, and he becomes a member of the board on the Michigan member of the board of the UAW at the end of that meeting, where even though he didn't have the credentials to be at that meeting, and that was part of how he got to where he was. That his name was always coming up and part of a credentials fight. These people shouldn't be here, because he never worked at the plant, the GM plant that sent him there. But he was accepted, and he got a seat on the board, but he got no money, no territory, no staff, no paid staff or anything. And within a year, he built up the biggest local union in the UAW. Wow,
that's amazing. He was a real go-getter.
He was. Yeah.
Yes. Now, how long is this book?
It's pretty long. It's roughly high 700, 790 maybe pages of text itself, and then it has about 100 or so, a little more than 100 pages of endnotes and bibliography and that sort of thing. So it's divided into, I think, 15 chapters. Some of them should be read in order, but there are some that, can be skipped or can be read, as individual chapters themselves. Like something it was the life and times of Walter Reuther, so that included the Vietnam War, it included the Cold War, it included, one of the chapters is, actually it's the longest chapter in the book, which I guess from that standpoint could be dropped entirely if you get tired reading it. But it's on IBM, which is the corporate welfare, let's say, system, and the growth of IBM out of National Cash Register and so forth, which is quite an intriguing story in and of itself, but it only marginally, includes Reuther toward the end of, when Watson Jr. takes over, and Watson Jr. and Reuther are friends, and had served on a committee that was formed by Eisenhower to look at national priorities, et cetera. That became a blueprint, really, for the Kennedy administration.
Now, how was the book received?
Oh, well, no, I didn't publicize it. It was received with mild appreciation, let's say. Like right now I'm getting all these calls about, it's a great book and et cetera, and we want to do this and that for you, which, sometimes they don't want to do anything for you at all. They just, want to take your money. But hopefully it's going to be received a bit more positively now. It was reissued. It was originally issued in 2016, and it's just reissued this last year, 2023.
Well, that's now your second book, which is Footprints, is actually a book of poetry. When did you start to write poetry in the middle of all of this?
Well, I wasn't writing it in the middle of all of this, but a couple of things happened. Maybe writing the Reuther book in the first place, led to my macular degeneration, or hurried it along. I guess it's not a causative agent, but it didn't help my eyesight. Reading, trying to read as much as I did, and all of the extra, kind of source work and so forth that had to go into it. So that happened. So by the end of the time I wrote the Reuther book, I was always writing poetry. As even as a young kid, I wrote poetry when I was working at I guess in that story of my academic life and so forth. Out of my undergraduate school, I worked for about 5 years at IBM and Endicott before going back to Syracuse. Syracuse was offering extension courses through IBM, and I was taking them, and I decided to go back and get a master's, and then I decided to stay. So in that interim period, when I was working at IBM, I was even writing poetry there.
Oh, wow. So you've done it a long time.
I'm doing it better, I think, now than I was doing it then, but hopefully I'm doing it better. I think I'm doing it better, but we'll see.
You'll see, yes. Well, I noticed that you have the book is laid out in different sections, different kinds of groupings of poems, and you start with family, with people. One of them that I found very interesting, or actually a couple of them, relate to history and your family history.
Yes, I guess. Which of my family history are we talking about now?
Well, let's see. I think the first one was downsizing that we mentioned.
Okay, you've read that one. The first one was actually about my mother, VBT, Veronica. My wife's name is Veronica. Viola Bond Ten Eyck. So that's the first one. The downsizing was an early one, and that was about being ready to downsize to leave my the place where we've been living. Like we talked about the last time we spoke, it was one that I wrote about going on 6 years ago by now, and I'm still here in the same house. And it's something that I should have been doing 5 years before I wrote the poem. But anyhow, it's a wishful thinking about it's time to move on. Leave the house, leave the garden where the spotted fawns cavort in early summer and all of that. And then talking about one of the things about downsizing is what are you going to get rid of and what's to keep. That's I think the third verse in that particular poem, and then going back, what looms ahead is loss behind regrets, and the regrets for the things I did or didn't do, along the way. The friends I met along the way and lost through distance and neglect, and et cetera. And then finally, the last stanza would be one about, the road behind's a one-way street. Ahead are bumps and bends we fear to peek around. The absence of old friends, the parting sorrows we must face. And then perhaps there's Jesus, thumb extended on a lonely stretch out there, who wants to bum a lift to who knows where. Because I didn't know where we didn't have any direct plans on where we would be going once we did downsize. Although my wife was Irish, born in Ireland, in Dublin, and my son is living in France. So it probably would have been France. But there were, there were reasons about, we had cats at the time. What do we do about them? Veronica has a better handle on foreign languages than I did, so she was, conversant in French, pretty conversant in French. She was more Italian than French, but. I was never good at languages. I was good at passing tests. So, when I was in high school, or we actually had started the program in Somerville in junior high, in I think second or third grade, but they didn't have the teachers. The second grade teacher was a wife of the president of the Board of Education at the time, I think. And she was a nice lady, a rather hefty lady, who kept sort of punching herself in the stomach, saying "ooh, ooh," for the French pronunciation.
Yes. Oh, wow.
And we learned to count.
Now, wait a minute. Yes, you learned to count. But you know what's interesting? You mentioned Dublin, and just passing about your family, and and that's another whole section in your book.
It is, yeah. I got to love Dublin. I wouldn't mind, talking about downsizing. I wouldn't mind if I were, I had a couple $1 million in the bank or something and could live, not quite like somebody like Tesla or what's his name, the old movie tycoon that lived in a hotel. He's a recluse at the end. Howard Hughes.
Oh, yes, Howard
Hughes.
Yes.
If I could live like that, there's a hotel in Dublin near Herbert Park, and that's in what's called the Ballsbridge section of I guess it's actually a suburb of Dublin, but it's you don't know when Dublin starts and where Ballsbridge begins. So it's along the path down the southern coast, which is beautiful, and it's right there. The American Embassy is next door. There's Herbert Park, which is it's a nice playground, let's say park, various activities. It's on two sides of the road, and it's right there near the train, the DART station, the train station, et cetera. So it's right across from what they call what's the Royal Dublin Society horse show place. So it's in a pretty active part of town, and it's a pretty ritzy part of town. There's a nice Thai restaurant right across the street, that I wouldn't mind going to frequently. And so I could see myself, spending a year or something. Just what do you give me? What do you charge me? For renting a room in the hotel for a year, or forever, or whatever it might be. I wouldn't mind being there because I'd be close to a lot of things that I'd like to do.
Now, you also mention in another section of the book, a section on Heiberg Forest, which is somewhere near Syracuse.
Yeah.
And why was that a special place for you?
Well, it's a special place because we like to go for walks there. We went for walks, before, not before we were married, I don't know, but after we were married and so forth. But I had a couple of poems about Heiberg Forest. Heiberg Forest is owned by, or at least managed by, the State Forestry School, which is on the same campus as Syracuse University. So, some of the forestry school students take courses at Syracuse, that are university courses, not so much the other way around. But so there's that. And so it's about 20 miles maybe, more or less, down the road, down Route 81, from Syracuse. And, it was a place that, you can go and walk around. Nobody's going to bother you there. And it's managed by the forestry school. They have fish ponds, that they're examining. Excuse me. What species are there and what pollutants or what agents, let's say, non-local or foreign, let's say, invasive species might be in the area, etc. So it's part forest, part just grass area with fish ponds and things of that sort in it. Right. So we'd like to go there. It's just a place to go and walk. The two poems, the first one is April in Heiberg Forest, when Veronica was pregnant with our son, so the poem takes place on Easter Sunday, where they are, in nature's pastoral scene, let's say. And then the next poem is Autumn in Heiberg Forest, because it's beautiful for the foliage. and you go there, and we took. By that time, David was born, and he was. We were carrying him around, on a papoose type pouch, and he was experiencing, the leaves falling, and the sounds and so forth of the woods, so that's about the second poem, and then the third poem is remembering of my father. Some of the things that he would teach. He grew up as a farmer mostly. He was at high school. He was the high school principal, not the high school. Excuse me. It spared me that problem. He was the junior high principal. Okay. So. In high school, it was a regional school, so it was a huge student body, so more than half of the kids were not from Somerville. They were from all of the surrounding towns like Bridgewater and Hillsborough, etc. They had no connection with my father through junior high. And, so it wasn't a terrible burden or anything, having my father as a principal. It might have been more of a burden for him having me as his son, during that time, because I was not I got myself into a bit of trouble, that he could have done without.
You must have an affinity for seasons, because your poems in this part, there's, in the fall and in the spring, and then you have another whole section in the book on the 5 seasons, which sort of stunned me. Don't we have only 4,
Oh, yeah. Well, it was sort of, they started off as the calendar poems,
okay.
Actually, they were all sonnets. I went to an event at the public library where there was poetry reading. It wasn't all poetry. There were some people that had written prose and so forth. There was a very small group, and they invited some youngsters, at least to me they were youngsters. They were young people writing poetry, and I think I don't know what their connection was with the region. Was something that the director of the library had found out, and some of them I don't know if they lived in New York, but they did these slam events and things of that sort in New York, and so they were the featured participants. But 2 people in particular, one was a guy who was in the English department at Marist, and he had written a book about it was some romantic relationship that developed between his main character and his kindergarten teacher. I think it was the kindergarten teacher. So he was a teacher in a high school. This is in the novel. He was a teacher in the high school, and the teacher's son was now one of his students. It might have been even in the university. I think it was in the university. He was a university professor, new one, and the kindergarten teacher's son was one of his students, and so he got to re-meet the kindergarten teacher, and a relationship developed between this kid that is now an adult and his kindergarten teacher, who is an older adult. And so it was called something about August. Okay, so and another guy that's part of my poetry group now was writing sonnets, and I said, okay, the stuff that I've written wasn't a sonnet, and if to be real, whatever kind of poetry you're going to write in the end, you should be able to write rhyme poetry, etc. So the first of those was late August. The thing in the list that was late August. And it was obviously the worst one in the whole collection. I've reissued the collection. It's coming out probably by the end of this week. I redid parts of late August, but I didn't rewrite the whole thing. I just fixed up sections that were I found particularly awkward. So I had August. I had, okay, now that let's try September, October, and January. So I had these various months, like, for instance, June. June's the month I was born, June, but everything that happens in June also happens in May, basically. They're not a lot different. And so what's there to say about May that's any different from what you're going to say about June? And the poems that I had written sort of fit into a narrative of, stages in life. So June, the month when I was born, graduation, love, etc. And then late August, the end of youth, and the beginning of settling into a career. September, midlife crises time, or when you reevaluate what you've been doing and make your resolutions that you're going to do better. October, later in life, and then January. January wasn't the start of the sequence; it was the end. The snow was there. Another year begins, and I'm still around, etc. Still here to shovel snow and all of that.
I'm still here. I love that. Yep. So then you also, the last section in the book is "Let Freedom Ring," and that's a more contemporary poem, I imagine.
That's about Ukraine. And that was written right after, a couple months or maybe even less, after the war began. And, the poem itself, I write a disclaimer right at the beginning that I don't think this poem is particularly good. It's pretty hackneyed theme, etc. And even the idea about it, ringing bells across the free world at the same time each day. Well, if you did it to that extreme, let them ring, for a minute or whatever. You don't want to start figuring out, well, should it be a minute or a half minute or 15 seconds and all of that. But if that actually happened every day, and you're ringing them early in the morning on the West Coast, around 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock here, so that when they get to England and France and on to Eastern Europe, in the summertime anyway, it's still going to be reasonable that people can be hearing bells, going off before it's too dark. And so it's a stupid idea. It's not. It's in general that something more, more appropriate, let's say, could be done. But I was afraid of the sanctions. That the sanctions are going to hit Russia. They're going to, but they're also going to backfire and affect us. More so, people like Germany and that were more dependent on Russian oil and gas, so that was the gist of it. My thought is that we're sort of in an era. Let's say a world of confrontation between autocracy and democracy. Democracy has yet to prove, let's say, to enough people that it's a superior form of government, or just let an autocrat, not necessarily like Putin, but one like Orban, or some of the more recent evolutions of autocrats take care of things for you. And so my thought was, one side in this conflict is going to be significantly degraded. If Putin loses, it's going to degrade his position in Russia. It's going to, let's say, enhance the position of democracy and so forth. And a lot of that good stuff has happened about NATO expansion and things of that sort. But now we're at the peril point of that, where the war in the Middle East is completely overwhelming. Let's say the news about what's happening in Ukraine. And the idea of not supplying them with the weapons and so forth that they would need, Ukraine doesn't have to win, that particular war. I would compare it to be like the American Revolution. The Americans weren't going to beat the Brits. They would win a battle, or they could win some major battles like Saratoga, Yorktown, and so forth. But as long as the Brits wanted to stay, the Americans weren't going to defeat them on the battlefield, particularly.
So,
but they could outlast them.
Right. So I have a question. Would you be willing to recite one of your poems for us?
Sure. I can only recite because I can't do very well on reading. Let me take a quick glass of water.
Okay.
Okay, I guess the one you talked about was one that wasn't in the first edition of this book. It'll be in the more recent one. But this one was written in September of 2022. And my wife died a year earlier in 2021, and wanted to have her ashes, some of them to remain here with me, but most of the rest to be placed near her on her parents' graves in Dublin. And we also took a little bit to put on Hoth Head, which was very special to us. And so that's why I was there. And this is actually the last full day I was going to be in Dublin. So one more glass of water because I'm getting myself hoarse. Okay, so this one's called St. Stephen's Green, September 2022. I'm sitting in noonday sun upon a wooden bench in Stephen's Green, my thoughts adrift, allowed to form and run from absence to the present, to the passing of the Queen. Yesterday I rode the rails of memory to Hoth, where your presence bid me stay. Then beneath the crown of Queen V's legacy, for a farewell view above �𝐚𝐞𝐞𝐨𝐤 Bay. Tomorrow, titled royals and invited common folk of rank, say farewell to plain blue hat that weathered changing winds of fashion, blitz to Brexit, condense a life in sermons spanning her 70-year reign, while I return alone across an ocean.
Okay. That must have been devastating to be there then.
When she died, it was really funny. Funny. I mean, funny in the sense, funny being strange. The day before she died, she was meeting with that new prime minister that lasted, almost about as long as she did the rest of the time.
Right.
That didn't last for very long. So she was, the new prime minister was giving her credentials to the Queen and so forth, and she was in her blue dress and so forth. So she wasn't just in sleeping garb or anything. And then the next day, my son had arrived, and he walked me halfway around Dublin. But we were. He wanted to come, back to Saint-Amand-Strand, where we stayed in a rental there at one point, and he wanted to go back to that area. So we made it to the town of Sandymount. We didn't get us back all the way to the Strand, the beach. So we're sitting there in a pub, getting some pub grub of some kind, and the television on, and you're sort of seeing these the scenes of the horses running around, at a horse show or at a race, and so forth. And then it came on that it was because that was her big events and so for the horses.
Exactly.
And she had just died. So it was we just saw her greeting the new prime minister the day before, and she had died.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? It's just the timing.
Yeah.
So what do you want to have happen with Footprints? What do you see happening with it?
Well, I'd like to see people read it. That would be nice. I would like to get some readership. I'd like to get some idea of what different readers think of it. I would like the ideas about my ideas about Ukraine and some of the other. There's a poem called Democracy. That's not another one that's. It was necessary to say at the time, but it's not a particularly well. It's again a pretty tacky kind of a poem, but that has a message, for now. There's one called Newtown Plus 5, which I wrote 5 years after hearing about the 5-year quotes anniversary, if that's the right word for it, of the Sandy Hook massacre. I wrote that one. And so there are things like that I would like to get into the public discourse a little bit, and so hopefully, people can read it, and hopefully some people enjoy it, and there are. I guess one or two poems one poem might be particularly partisan. It was called Bytes and Pixels of Inauguration Day, January 2017, I guess it would have been. And it never mentions the word of Trump or anything. He was just orange hair and ruddy face, and the only names it mentions would have been Grant, because of one of the other poets I recited, and then at the end, Marcus Aurelius and Commodus.
So where's Footprints available?
It's on Amazon. Hopefully within a very short time, on the new copy, that it does include the one about the passing of the Queen and so forth, the St. Stephen's Green, and a number of other poems would be included, and a couple of the poems where I tweaked them, some a little bit more than others. That'll be available. Also that will be on Amazon as well. So it's on Amazon. The web, the particular link on Amazon would be available on my website, which is
what is your website?
It's James Ten Eyck. Try to spell that one. .com. It's James, all lowercase, but James Ten Eyck, which is the number 10, TEN, and then EYCK. JamesTenEyck.com. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, James. As a reminder to our listeners, we've been speaking to James Ten Eyck about his books, Reuther. Is that the full title, or is it The Life and Times of Reuther? The Life and Times of Walter Reuther, and the subtitle is An Unfinished Liberal Legacy. Okay, and Footprints, which is available online at Amazon and on his website. And elsewhere, I guess, and Barnes&Noble, I think, as well. As well, okay. Well, that's a wrap for us today, folks. Bye for now, and have a great day.